All right, welcome back to the shop. I am back on the PBY today, and I'm excited to share with you guys some of the progress that I've made, as well as go over some additional things. So let me turn you around and we'll get right into it. Now, before I turn the camera around and show you guys what I've done, I want to remind you where I've come from. And uh, this model again is a Dynam PBY. It's a foamy ARF. Comes out of the box pretty well. The instructions are a little lackluster, so you need to follow forums and other things online to get it basically assembled and get some safety tips along the way. Props or battery, not both in your shop. Okay. On top of that, we've got some modifications that we want to do to improve the model, and I've never flown this model yet. It's still on the bench. Now, having gone through all of that stuff to remind you what I've covered so far, it's a good way to segue into another reminder. So this is your final reminder about the FPV Builds RC Holiday Super Sale on Black Friday. All Dynam planes will be marked down 10 to 15%. That's quite a bit, and they will also include a free LiPo. Everything else on the site will be marked down 10 to 20% with free shipping. So head on over to FPV Builds RC and show them support for supporting this channel as well. There are a number of additional modifications that I kind of want and / need to do. The first one that I really kind of need to do is to this canopy. We talked about this in the first video, where sometimes the back of this hatch, the battery hatch, will want to lift up. And the reason for that is when you get to certain situations, it can create a positive pressure inside of this cavity, and so that will cause it to pop up, and that will make this canopy go into the prop arc. So we're trying to avoid that, so I am going to install a hatch latch, and you can do this. I'll probably use, given that this plastic, I'm probably going to use a foam safe CA, because there is foam under here and I don't want anything to really melt. It'll make a nice clean installation and should make it nice and robust, reliable moving forward. So there's that as well. Additionally, we have finally parts from Park Flyer Plastics. Now, for the astute of you that are tuning in, yes, I have I'm assuming you can read, and for the title of the video kind of gives it away. I have modified the wing to have retractable floats. Now I'm going to play a little video clip in here as I talk, but a lot of times modelers get PBY floats wrong. The reason being are a couple of two minor details, right? The tip of the float is actually fully symmetrical, but it does hang down below the bottom line of the wing. Now, in addition to that, the tips of the PBY wing are clipped as well. So when the floats are down, then you can actually see the exposed end of the aileron. And that's just the way it was designed. And now, for this modification, there are a number of ways that I've seen people go about it. The easiest and probably least painful way to go about it is to use retractable landing gear, retracts. Now, that's not to say that that's not without problems in and of itself. Let me show you what I mean. I have a number of these things out here on this stool, and I have had them in my bin for a long, long time, and I had a pair that I had set aside. They were working really well. They were nice and shallow. They were going to fit inside the wing. I had treated them with Corrosion X, and as I was working and installing one of them on one side, yeah, it crapped out on me. This is a common thing. So I went through other of these and started working with them as well, and then after multiple cycles, they failed. So that is why I typically don't like to use retracts. Now, that's not to say there aren't better ones out there, but for this modification, you can't really justify the price, in my opinion, when there are alternatives that are cheaper and just as reliable as an E-Tract. It's just a little bit more cumbersome. Now that option constitutes a servo, and I have a high-tech Metal Gear servo here. Reason you want Metal Gear is it will be very self-evident in a moment. Okay, so what have we done? First and foremost, I have cut off the tip. So explaining here, I have cut off the tip of the wing, and again, that's to mimic that actual thing on the full scale, but also it helps to create a nice flat spot for the float to retract into. Okay, now the floats are not exactly correctly sized, but we're willing to make that a sacrifice for this model. I simply lined up the leading edge and let the trailing edge sort of do its thing. We're hanging slightly below the bottom of the wing. We have a smoother surface. That's how I oriented each end. And so the other thing that I had to do for the original float, there's a piece of plastic down here that I cut off using my razor saw and then sanded it flat. The foam that I removed here was removed using my Dremel tool. A good piece of advice. So all I did was I laid this over top where I wanted it and traced it with a fine tip Sharpie. And then I cut outside those lines. The reason I cut with my razor blade first is because that'll give you a cleaner edge. If you just go to town using the Dremel, you're going to get rougher edges, and it just makes your life a whole lot easier if you cut your shape first. Now, originally, this was a recess that I had hogged out for the retract unit, and it ended up being a blessing in disguise that they failed, and I went this route because I needed a sturdy piece of wood for the horn to lay flat on so that there's little play from the outside. Okay, there's going to be a little bit of play. Okay, that's kind of expected in this setup. But using the ball links gives me as little slop as possible, and the Metal Gear helps to keep those more in place. Okay? So that's all that this modification is. It's quite simple, it's easy to do, and there are a couple of glues involved. Why do you need different types of glue? Well, there are specific glues for specific kinds of applications. So when the control horn and the Dubro hinges are glued to the plastic, I use medium CA. I roughed up the surfaces with the quicksand hand sander and glued those in place. Now the rail zip, I put that liquid on the hinge, just on the hinge part. That prevents the CA from gluing the hinge so that it doesn't bend. Okay? It's a new tip. I've been preaching it a lot, and I'm using it over and over and over again to hammer it home that it works, and it works very reliably. The next glue that I used is actually hot glue. I used the hot glue to put the servo into the wing pocket. The reason I chose hot glue for this is because you can remove the servo, should it go bad. You can remove it with a little rubbing alcohol. Just drip some rubbing alcohol in there. It'll soften up the hot glue, and you can pull that servo out. In the meantime, it should be waterproof, right? Prevent water from getting in, even though I have, again, treated these servos with Corrosion X, because this will be seeing water, right? All right, so from there, other glue. Fix and Flex, Deluxe Fix and Flex. Now this stuff is pretty new to me. I haven't really used this before. Bonds foam, plastic, metal, produces flexible bonds in ways that other glues cannot. Now let me tell, this is clear glue, and this is what I use to glue the wood pieces to the foam. Now the reason that I did that is because I could have used Gorilla Glue, but Gorilla Glue sort of expands everywhere. Now I could trim that back, but given that I want to try to paint this model, I wanted to try the Fix and Flex first and see how it goes. And I am very pleased with the result. I'm glad I tried it. And I think it's a good option for a lot of different things Actually, something else that I'm going to do in this video anyway. So that is the entirety of the modification. You've got the glues, you've got the application, the installation, and I've mechanically set it up so that the endpoints are consistent. I don't have to program or pre-program anything in my radio. It's just 100% to negative 100%, and we're good to go. Okay. The last thing that's worth noting is I did have to use one servo reverser. You can get these pretty cheap on Amazon now, and I did that on just one side, obviously. So yeah, pretty straightforward. So what's next? There are a number of additional modifications that I kind of want and / need to do. The first one that I really kind of need to do is to this canopy. We talked about this in the first video where sometimes the back of this hatch, the battery hatch, will want to lift up. And the reason for that is when you get to certain situations, it can create a positive pressure inside of this cavity, and so that will cause it to pop up, and that will make this canopy go into the prop arc. So we're trying to avoid that, so I am going to install a hatch latch, and you can do this. I'll probably use, given that this plastic, I'm probably going to use a foam safe CA because there is foam under here and I don't want anything to really melt. It'll make a nice clean installation and should make it nice and robust, reliable moving forward. So there's that as well. Additionally, we have finally parts from Park Flyer Plastics. So while I let that paint dry for the oil coolers, I want to show you guys what's going on with the underside of the fuselage from the kit from Park Flyer Plastics. Now it includes two different parts for this. One is for the tail end, the aft end, and then the front end, fore end. So there are a couple of things that I need to note about this, so let me flip you around and I'll show you on camera what I mean. So looking at the bottom of the fuselage on the bench here, you can see we've got the aft end as well as the fore end. And this is as it comes from the factory. It's a pretty thin material, and I'll try to, you can pretty easily peel it up from the adhesive that they've got on here. But what is worth noting is that this plastic that is provided in the Park Flyer Plastics kit is a little bit thicker of a material. So it's going to be a little bit more resilient, which is why I actually want to replace the aft end piece, even though stylistically they're not very different. Now, moving to the front end, it's a different story. So to help with tracking in the water, there are ridges here. And I can pull this protective plastic off to show you a little bit better. So this is going to help dig into the water, and these strakes are going to help with our directional stability in the water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scuff up with the steel wool, just like I did on the oil cooler vents, scuff the inside, shoot some paint on it, and then I'm going to apply it using the Fix and Flex. I think that'll be a good adhesive for it. And I'm going to keep it gray because eventually I would like to paint this model entirely gray. So if you haven't seen the Hatch Latch Dubro 101 video, it's pretty straightforward to install these things. You pick one side where you're going to have the catch, and then you have another side that you're going to have the latch. So the card, the instrument or product card, sorry, comes with a template that you can cut out, and that's all I did was I took a number 11 and cut out the pattern, and then traced it into where I wanted it to be, and then started trimming from there, and then used a little bit of CA. I've got foam safe CA here, and I did put another little couple drops of the rail zip in here so that my my latch wouldn't get stuck from the glue, and it's all in place. I'm happy with it. I think it's great, and a little bit of extra security to keep that hatch closed. All right, it's a new day, and I thought I'd bring you along the ride because I didn't actually show you the pontoons, the floats. I didn't show you those working. I can't not show you. All right, so as you can see, we've got a battery plugged in with the blinky lights going on, and I have a gear down switch marked in my transmitter, and they definitely go down, and they definitely go up. So really pleased with Punch about that. I did cut away a little bit of foam to get more room for this larger battery, and a little bit of foam removed up front here to allow it to slip just a little bit forward. Did have some paint removed when I took the masking tape off, and I'm really pleased with how this glue worked out. The Flex and Seal is really great stuff for this particular application. So that's it for this episode. I'm glad you guys could follow along, and hope you get something out of this. It's really been kind of fun to tinker with this model and make it do stuff that I want it to. There's more stuff yet to come, more stuff that I want to just play around with. I got ideas rolling in my brain, and this is a good outlet for it. So if you guys have the same inclination, you might want to get your Builder Basics going on a model like this, because it really is a good idea to have models that you can mess with, mess up, and just kind of in general not care as much, don't have as much emotionally invested. That said, if you need additional hardware, make sure you're heading on over to dubro.com. Use code Josh10 in checkout. Get yourself 10% off. And until next time, guys, keep working on your flying works of art.